These documents I'm holding are supposedly public records, but as you can see, they've been heavily blacked out. That makes me angry, and it should make you angry too. Let's talk about why. This is AZ Central Rewind.
Where is the editorial responsibility in publishing records of this nature?
Well, where's the editorial responsibility in not publishing them?
Let me preface this by saying that in addition to being a senior editor at the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com, I'm a board member with the Arizona First Amendment Coalition, an organization that advocates for government transparency and provides legal help for journalists. Government agencies in Arizona are required by law to keep records of their activities and provide them to the public, that's you and me, so we can hold public officials accountable. They're using our money to keep those records, but often they don't trust us enough to see what's in them. In other words, we're not getting what we pay for. And this is what that looks like. All across Arizona, journalists and private citizens alike are being denied access to public records and public meetings at an almost unprecedented rate. Several years ago, our state legislature right here even tried to ban reporters from the floor of the State House and confine them to the visitors gallery where they wouldn't be able to ask lawmakers questions. As a citizen, you're entitled to see almost any kind of public records, whether they involve police reports, court documents, expense reports from your public school and superintendent, or any of the thousands of kinds of records that your state and local governments are required to keep. Now, there are a lot of good officials out there who obey the law and release records promptly the way the law says they're required to. But a growing number of the people whose salaries you pay aren't as prompt, or in some cases, they willingly obstruct attempts to access public documents. And that obstruction has been going on for years. This is a big deal because public records are what journalists use to document and source the stories we bring you so you know we're telling the truth. Without public records, you wouldn't have known about this.
Father Gagan has a history of homosexual involvement with young boys. I understand his recent departure from St. Brendan's may be related to this problem.
Or this.
This is a devastating security breach that was leaked out of the Pentagon.
And this would have never happened.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
In Arizona, we've used public records to tell you about police shooting cover-ups, about public officials giving big raises to their staffs, and about how tax-funded hospitals are failing to treat their patients. Without government documents, those stories become harder to tell, and our only remedy is to file a lawsuit, which we've done too many times in the past few years. In the recent serial street shooter case, we had to file suit for access to court records involving the suspect's arrest. The documents detailed the evidence police were using to build their case. Until then, police were vague about the reasons behind the arrest. During the Jody Arias trial, a judge tried to hear testimony from Arias behind closed doors. We fought to keep that testimony public. Unfortunately, court cases get expensive. Media organizations in Arizona have spent millions fighting for public records and access to public proceedings. In fact, some public officials actually encourage that kind of confrontation instead of cooperation. A number of years ago, an Arizona School Boards Association official actually recommended that when school officials receive requests for public records, they should, quote, stonewall as long as you can, end quote. He said this at a school conference of administrators. He didn't know there was a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist in the audience recording him. Arizona's public records law dates back at least as far as Arizona's territorial days, when it was essential for members of the public to be able to examine land deeds, mining claims, and even cattle brands. In other words, transparency was then, and is still today, key. The law says public officials are required to keep records of their activities and that those records shall be available for inspection by any member of the public at all times during business hours. There's only a handful of very narrow exceptions. James Madison, one of our founding fathers and our fifth president, who was considered the father of the Bill of Rights, once wrote that a popular government without popular information or the means of acquiring it is but a prologue to a farce or a tragedy or perhaps both. He wrote that knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power which knowledge gives. Apparently, there are a lot of public officials in Arizona who've never heard of Mr. Madison. In fact, there are bills in the state legislature right here every year that try to circumvent our public records law and allow public officials to operate in secret. This isn't just a problem for journalists. It also affects real people. In Tucson, a young woman battled police for years, only to receive a handful of pages from an 800-page police report on her brother's murder. It was only when a newspaper in Tucson threatened to sue that police finally relented. We at the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com certainly hope you never find yourself in a similar situation, but there are steps you can take to make things better. First, contact your state legislators and tell them you want your government to be more transparent and that you oppose secrecy. Second, you can support the Arizona First Amendment Coalition. You can find out more about it at azfoi.org. You can request your own copies of public records. Just go to azpublicinfo.com and you'll find everything you need to get started. You can also support the journalists who fight for your right to know by subscribing to your local paper. To subscribe to the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com, visit connect.azcentral.com and click subscribe in the top right corner of your screen. In the meantime, if your public records request ends up looking like this, or if you're not allowed to attend a public meeting, just let us know and we'll have a reporter investigate what your government is trying to hide. In fact, you can send us any news tip at newstips@arizonarepublic.com. This is AZ Central Rewind, where we listen to your questions about recent events and take a step back from the action to give you answers. Let us know what you think on Twitter or Facebook, and get in touch if you have any more questions. For more, go to azcentral.com.
They're very sensitive records.
With all due respect, Your Honor, that's not the question. The records are public.